I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you.
Perfect. Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Root Zone podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Stout. I'm excited about the next guest. Like I say, I always say that. That's always my first line. Maybe that's just going to be my line. I'm excited for our next guest, Mr. Chris Brown. I met Chris Brown at a conference in 2023, so not too long ago, end of 2023, at the Landscape Magazine Growth Summit.
Thank you, because I would not have remembered that.
Yeah, I think I wrote it down too. Yeah, I wrote it down just to be sure. Me and Steve, my business partner, went down, and there was some confusion with the room. And we went to the front desk, and they said, well, you're roomed up with Chris Brown. And we said, Chris Brown? Are you serious? This is going to be even more fun than we thought. But anyway, we ended up being roommates with Chris Brown at this Growth Summit, and got a great relationship with him. I think his company, Teed & Brown, is something that I aspire to be, something that Stout Long Pest aspires to be, and what better way to get some insight on Teed & Brown than talk to Mr. Brown himself. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's small world. We're having a little networking event here in Pennsylvania. Chris was nice enough to fly down and bring a couple people with him, and I think this is going to be a fun event. But, Chris, explain to these people, how long have you had Teed & Brown? I know you've been in business a long time, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. The business was actually started in September of 1995, and I graduated university in December of 94, so less than a year after graduating college. And I did take the scenic route through college. I took it was about 5.5 years to get the bachelor's degree. My parents loved that, let me tell you.
I'm sure.
And yes, we started the business up pretty quickly. I initially wanted to become a golf course superintendent, and had worked on golf courses, really loved the outdoors, loved the science of growing grass. The creative ADHD side of my brain loved the fact that the job involved, okay, you've got some bookkeeping work, but then you've got the crew to manage, then you got to drive around the course and check out the grass, make sure it's all looking good, and then you got the mechanical aspect. And
Speak of my language here.
Yeah, you didn't have to focus on any one thing for very long. And that's what really appealed to me about it. And so I went down that route. When I got out of school, found that there was a lot of other people who saw things the same way I did and wanted to go into that business, and there was only so many jobs to go around.
Yeah.
So it was getting really hyper
Was it really competitive in college too, in that program itself, or when you got out? Like, it was everyone in those programs like thinking they're just going to get a super. Everybody wanted to be in the golf industry. Was that the focus of your college career? Was turf?
Yeah, it was a turf grass science program, and it was at Penn State University, and they actually have two turf grass science programs. One is golf turf specific,
okay,
and that's a 2-year certification program. And to my understanding, I don't believe there's any college credit to that, or there wasn't at the time I was there. If that's different, I apologize if that's different now. But it's a very intense, very well-respected program around the world, because they just take people for like boot camp for 2 years, and then they get, I don't know how many months off, but an extended summer. Basically goes from mid-spring to mid-fall to go work on the course. And then they come back, and those people are just trained up as some of the best golf course superintendents in the world. I mean, it's just incredible. I didn't go through that program. I went through the 4-year program, so I got a bachelor's degree in turf grass science, because I knew I wanted to actually go through college, get the degree. But yeah, it was competitive in a way, but it was also a lot of camaraderie. It's very much like a fraternity, and everybody was very supportive of each other, helping each other out. But there was that competition, like who's going to land the more elite internship at the better club.
Yeah.
So I, felt some of that, but it never felt negative in any way. It was always sort of a positive, pushing each other energy. So that was nice. But again, it was something where, when you got out, you realized that, hey, whereas when I first got into the business as just a summer job, it was normal for an assistant to work as an assistant for a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, and then find a superintendent's job, and that was sort of the normal pace.
Yeah.
When I was graduating, now a lot of clubs had 2, 3, 4 assistants, because they were just sort of lining them up, because there was so many people getting into the business that the superintendent jobs, for every one job, there might be 300 applicants. And even if you're in the top 10%, well, like, you're still got a 1 in 30 shot of winning that,
Yeah.
right?
Was that the time frame, late mid 90s, was that a time frame when golf was really picking up? I mean, I'm thinking, that's right around Tiger Woods' time. That's when everything was golf was really taking off. We recently had Al, who was a assistant superintendent at Oakmont, and that I was amazed at how it's a very similar, like an intern. Like you go to a club, you learn everything you can from this club, and then another club will contact you and say, "Hey, we're looking for a superintendent too." Yeah.
Yeah, and typically as a superintendent, you have your assistants, and your job is not to keep them as your assistant. Your job is to train them up so they can go somewhere else and become a superintendent. Yeah. And you want to build a reputation as somebody who churns out great superintendents.
Really?
So that the new younger people coming into the business are all going to want to come work for you, right? And so that's typically how it is. And if somebody's an assistant at a club for more than a handful of years, it's almost seen as a failure on both them and the superintendent.
Wow.
Every club's a little different. I'm overgeneralizing, but that's the vibe. But yeah, I got out and I realized, and here's what happened. I realized I didn't have a strong passion for golf. Okay. I enjoyed the golf courses. I was a terrible golfer, and I just couldn't get the hang of it, no matter how hard I tried. And I tried. I did, because I figured I'm getting into this business. I should really learn how to play. And every now and then you get that one good shot, and you're thinking, oh, that was great. But, like, I'm talking 1 out of 18 holes of hacking around the place. So, I didn't love golf. And then when I graduated, I became an assistant superintendent at a club near where I grew up, and saw more behind the scenes and started to understand what was involved in that business, and realized that the superintendent's job was largely dealing with members, dealing with budgets, dealing with all the things I had no interest in doing. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm in this field. I don't really love golf all that much, and all the stuff I like doing about this job is not what the superintendent's doing.
Yeah.
And so the luster had really worn off for me. Started looking around, and I thought, well, I've got this degree in how to grow grass, and I should really try to do something with it.
Yeah.
What am I going to do here? And I had always had...
Well, your parents were hoping that you did something with it.
They were really hoping. Yeah, they were. Yeah. I think I can't imagine some of the conversations they had with me not there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, I was looking around for something else to do. And at the time, it was kind of an interesting situation. I went home one night. It was like a Saturday evening or something, because as I said, the club where I was working was right like a couple miles away from where I grew up, so my parents were still there. And I have an older sister, and I was there, and it was Saturday evening, and then all of a sudden, this guy drives in a Hummer. Now, when I say a Hummer, this is before Hummers were a thing. So
before they bastardized them and turned them into a SUV?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It was a military vehicle that he had, and I had never seen one before, and this was when the only people in the world who had one were him, maybe one other person, and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
That was like it, right?
Yeah.
So I look out in our driveway, and I said to my sister, why is there a tank in our driveway? It looked like a tank. And she said, oh, that's Rick's car. And I said, who's Rick? She said, oh, it's this guy I'm dating. Oh, okay. So Rick comes in, so I get to meet him, and I said, man, what is that thing? He's like, oh, dude, come on, get in. So he takes me for a ride. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And hanging out with him, just really outgoing, fun kind of guy. And then after we get back to the house, he says, hey, we're all going out for pizza. A bunch of us are going out to grab some pizza. Why don't you come with us? I was like, cool, thanks, man. So we all go out, and then the check comes, and I pull out my wallet. He's like, no, put that away. And he pulls out like this wad of $100 bills from his pocket, and I'm going, okay, who is this guy? What's going on, right? And he's just enjoying life, and I'm just seeing how much he's enjoying life. And so I asked my sister, what does he do? She said, oh, he's got a roofing business. I said, oh, okay. Is this something like his parents started up and he took it up? No, he started up about 10 years ago on his own. Just got out there and started a roofing business. Really? And I was like, really? Okay. And then the more I find out, it's like, oh, this weekend, we're just going to go to Paris this weekend for the fun of it, this kind of thing. And so I'm okay. I'm looking at my superintendent who's killing himself 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
For, an okay paycheck, but certainly not worth the effort he was putting in.
You got to love it, right?
And then I'm looking at this guy going, okay, that's the life I want.
Yeah.
And so I pulled him aside one day and I said, what would it take for me to start my own business? And he just said, just go do it. And I said, okay. But he said, I don't have any money saved. He's like, yeah, I don't care. Go do it.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, but I need to put together a business plan. He said, no, you don't. Just go do it. And he, after enough prodding and pushing, he kind of sensed, okay, I'm not at that point where I'm ready to pull the trigger just yet. So he said, look, my brother works at the local insert national franchise lawn care chain name here.
Absolutely.
Works at this location. He's one of the managers and service managers and salesmen down there. Why don't you go see if they've got an opening, and just you can learn what the lawn care side of things is. And I thought, that's perfect. That's what I need to do.
Yep.
So I literally quit my assistant job and went to push a spreader around for that company for a huge pay cut.
Yeah,
just
I'm
to
sure.
try to learn what was going on. That brother of his, who he introduced me to, is Peter Teed, who ended up becoming my business partner.
Wow.
And I think really within about a month, the two of us just clicked because we realized he had what we joke about it, he had the street smarts, I had the book smarts.
Okay.
And that's really kind of what it was. He was one of these guys who could go out and, the old joke is sell ice creams to Eskimos. It's probably not a PC term at this point. I apologize. But he was just able to sell, but he could just relate to people. He was not intimidated by people with a huge house and a lot of money. He knew how to talk. And so we said, hey, how about this? I'll organize the business. I'll get all the paperwork behind the scenes, which is stuff he did not have any interest in.
Yeah. I hate that shit.
I can bring the scientific know-how, and he can bring the hands-on practical experience and real-world experience and customer relations experience. And let's see what we can make of this. And that was pretty much it. We hit the ground running within a year and haven't looked back since.
So that was 95, right around 95?
Yep.
Well, then, I always think how fortunate I am to be lucky enough to have all the equipment that we have available to us. You even mentioned it. You said I started pushing a spreader. That's a rude awakening, going from a golf course, which has all the equipment they ever wanted, to a push spreader. And then saying, okay, I like this, I can do this. Hey, Mr. Teed, let's do this for real. I didn't I've said on this podcast, I didn't have any money saved up either. Did you guys hit the banks and say, what kind of personal loans, friends, how can we get this done? Did you just say, oh, we need a spreader right now, let's go buy a spreader, we need 10 bags of fertilizer for the first job? What was the actual start? Did you put a little plan together? I'm assuming you put some sort of little. I feel like I known you a little bit enough that you had some sort of plan to it.
Yeah, there was nothing written out. There was no business plan put together, but there was a discussion between us, and it was very much, we knew that we wanted to go after the higher end clients, the clients who wanted a higher caliber of service. So it really stemmed from the fact that we were working for a company who had certain quotas in terms of the work production every day. You had to get X number of jobs done every day. And it didn't allow for time to really do some fine detail work on the property. So you come out, you spread the fertilizer. Maybe while you're spreading, you notice that there's a whole bunch of new weed patches popping up. Okay, you might want to go take the backpack sprayer and go out and hit those. You don't have time to do that, so you got to move on. And the number of times customers would go to him specifically and say, look, I'll pay more, just spend the time and get this done right. And he said, I can't, because the company wouldn't allow it. So we both knew that's the customer we wanted, somebody who didn't mind paying a little more to get a better quality service. And we would use better materials and spend the time really to get things done right. So yeah, it was a discussion that we were going to go after that, but putting together a formalized business plan or something, that was never done.
So was it guerrilla marketing, knocking on doors? How'd you get your first customer? How'd you get your 10th? How'd you get your 20th? Did you have the know-how to at least Yellow Pages was still a thing, I think, at that point? Yeah.
Yellow Pages was still very much a thing, and what we did, it was actually kind of fun. You mentioned the finance part of it, and we each had, I can't even remember, I think maybe $1,500 saved up or something like that. So we pooled that. My parents actually gave us a loan of a couple $1,000s, and his older brother, not the same one that I had known before, a different older brother, gave him a loan for the same amount.
Yeah.
And we got a Chevy van that was on the lot. They were trying to push it off the lot. They gave it to us, no money down financing.
Yeah.
So, and then a local fertilizer vendor gave us a line of credit. So between all that, we were able to get enough stuff together that we could hit the ground running and start doing stuff and paying for all that. Now, as far as getting the customers, this was kind of fun, and it's, guerrilla marketing, I think, definitely. We sat down, I had a printer, A small, old Macintosh computer. I mean, nothing like the modern ones for anybody who's listening who's younger than 40.
Yeah. Did you have to rip off the paper after you're done printing it when it came off the old school printers? What do they remember the?
Yeah, the dot matrix printers you're talking about. That wasn't the case. I had I had a bubble jet that was just absolutely amazing because it could print 3 pages a minute. It was like lightning fast, right?
Unbelievable.
And so, but we sat there and printed off all these advertising pages that we had made, and it was literally just a page of text. It was some of the worst advertising you've ever seen. But it was about, hey, here's what we're all about. And then we just drove around and did two things. Number one is we stuffed them into mailboxes.
Okay.
Which we later found out from the post office is not necessarily kosher.
Definitely frowned upon.
Definitely frowned upon. So we stuffed thousands of them into mailboxes. But luckily enough people saw past our horrible marketing skills and actually read it and thought, wow, these guys seem interesting. Let me check them out.
Yeah.
And so we picked up some clients that way. But at the same time, what we did is we would mark down and make a list. He would be driving, and I would be writing down the names of the streets. So we were driving all through the towns that we lived in to pick which are the best streets. So if we're going to spend money on marketing to somebody, we want to make sure it's got a nice house, a nice big property. So if we do sell it, we're going to be making a good amount of money.
Yeah.
And because it costs the same to mail some sort of advertisement to somebody with a 50,000 square foot lawn as it does to somebody with a 3,000 square foot lawn.
Yeah.
So let's maximize the per dollar amount that we're going to get out of this. So we did that, and then over the winter, because we were coming in through the fall, and we just picked up a handful of customers in the fall. He had a pickup truck that we were using at that time, and he also had a snowplow for the pickup truck. And so he started going around and offering snowplow services. Oh. And then all those customers we were able to, by spring, convert to lawn customers.
Nice.
Maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of them.
Yeah.
And but what we did is, as we made that list, they had these old books. I remember the name of the company was Hill Donnelly. I don't think they exist anymore. But these were cross-reference directories, and they were like phone books. But they were printed out in such a way where you could go to one section and look at an entire town numerically by telephone number. So the lowest telephone number would be first all the way down to the highest telephone number at the end. And it would have the name of the person, the address, and all the information there. So if you knew of a telephone number and you wanted to look it up, you could scroll through and find it pretty quickly because it's all in numerical order, and then see who does that belong to. Then on another page, it would have it split out by street. So it'll have every street in alphabetical order, and then you get to that street, and it's got all the addresses on that street and who the name is, and the full address. And then
this is blowing my mind, by the way, but go ahead.
And this is all paper.
Yeah.
So we would go through and say, okay, we're in New Canaan, Owen Oak Ridge Road. That's an actual road in New Canaan, very nice road. And I would open that up and sit down and look at it and go, okay, boom, here's Owen Oak Ridge. Here's the 50 clients or 50 homeowners on Owen Oak Ridge that we have listing, and sit down and hand peck them out, type them out on the type, and save them as a Word document to print off mailing labels so that we would start mailing in the spring. And I think I ended up compiling a list of maybe 3,000-4,000 names over the winter, just every day plugging away for a couple hours.
Wow.
And that's how we built up by the end of the
Talk
first
about
spring.
you're not kidding, guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
That's doing your research, but I don't know, there has to be a service still like that. I mean, how that still has to be valuable. You know, you did that in 95. Mm-hmm. If we did that in 2025, I think there's still value in it. If those lists were you're able to get those lists, because I guess they're just not available anymore. Privacy laws and things like that. You wouldn't be able to get those lists these day and age. I'm
not sure. We did for quite a while. Actually, that company stopped printing the paper directories, which makes sense. But they actually there was another firm bought them out. Something happened, but we ended up finding we were getting them in CD-ROM, and they were showing up, and that was actually much better. This is years later, like 10, 15 years later. And you'd load the CD and you'd type in the name of the street, and then you'd check off all the names that you wanted to mail to. And that was actually nice because it would have them marked if they were on like a do not mail list or something, so you could avoid that.
Yep.
And then once you've checked everybody off, you hit like, okay, download to Excel, and it would put it into an Excel spreadsheet for you.
Yeah.
And then you could use that, do a mail merge, print off the labels, or you could give that to the mailing company and say, hey, we want all these brochures mailed to this list. So we still did some of that for years later. Recently, about a year or two ago, we got in. We haven't done any direct mailing in quite some time.
Yeah.
But about a year or two ago, we were thinking about doing it again, and I Googled around, I looked around, and I couldn't find a similar thing. So I'm not sure if they exist or if my skills at using the Google machine as I get older are getting a little less sharp.
It might be.
Which could be, yeah.
AI is taking over the world pretty soon. So, fast forward, you guys just kept growing. I mean, 2 guys first year, 3 guys. How rapid was the growth? What were some of the growing pains that you experienced in those first couple of years? I mean, I have a partner now, but my first 2 years was I was a solo owner operator. So the decisions that needed to be made were all on my shoulders. Was that a fluid thing those first couple of years with the partner?
Boy, that's a great question. There's a lot to it. I don't want to give the impression that we started the company and then we've been steadily growing ever since. That's not the case at all. We've had our up years and down years. We haven't had too many down years where we actually did less business than the year before. See, in fact, I think maybe 1 or 2. But we had a lot of years where we were just flat and we didn't grow at all because we just didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know what was holding us back. And so we grew pretty quickly up to about 500 clients. And if memory serves, I think we had about 5 or 6 employees at that point in time. And that's about where we hovered for quite some time and didn't understand. It was basically every year, the number of new clients we would get in would essentially supplant the old ones that had canceled, either moving or dissatisfied or whatever it might be. And we just weren't able to get any bigger, and we didn't understand why. And it took years before, at that point in time, well, let me back up just a little bit. Our initial name was not Teed & Brown. That's what we started with. Okay, our initial name was Grassroots Lawn Care. And there are some grassroots companies out there now.
I was going to say, if you Google Grassroots, I guarantee there's a couple of them.
Yeah, so which shows that, hey, it wasn't that bad of an idea to use that name, except for the fact that lots of people have that name, so you kind of don't stand out from the pack at all.
Yeah.
And we spoke to a gentleman from another company very similar company in that it was 2 partners who had gotten this thing going and were really successful. It was a garage organization system company, so nothing in landscape or turf management or anything. And, kind of lamented to him, we don't know what we're doing wrong here. And finally he sat us down and goes, guys, your name and your marketing sucks. So what do you mean? Now, this is still well beyond just the printed pages that we started off with. Now we had like actual graphic designers making up some nice logos and things like that. So we thought we had that dialed in pretty well. He's like, no, here. He said, who is your customer base? And we described the customer base. He goes, yeah, I'm looking at your brochures. I'm looking at your letterhead. I'm looking at your company name. It does not say anything in there that makes me think that you guys are offering a better quality service that people should expect will be more expensive but worth it.
Yeah, you were marketing. You were in the crowd.
One of the crowd. That was it. So we bit the bullet, and we actually went with the marketing company they had hired to give them their brand image and their marketing strategy. And we remortgaged the building we had been in to get the money to pay them. And I think it was about $100,000, which was just a killer amount of money at that time for us.
Sure.
But we just said, okay, you know what, we got to do this. We threw all in, and thank goodness it worked. It really worked. And they were the ones that came to us and said, you should be using your names, Teed & Brown. And, kind of smack yourself in the head like I just paid someone 6 figures to tell me to use my name.
But use your name. Yeah. But that's they were instrumental in the name, but they also did all of your branding too, right?
Yeah, they came up with the logo. They came up with the marketing strategy. And, what they said, and they did it it was very organically. It was a wonderful process that they went through. They actually spoke to our customers and said, what is it about these guys that you like that you didn't find in any other companies you've used? What are the things that you don't like about the companies that you've run into in the past? What is it that they're doing differently? And, really what they got back was just that personalized service, the ability to, when something was wrong, they knew that we could figure out what it was and that we would treat it correctly, that we were responsive to them, that we took a lot of pride in doing things at that level, the higher end stuff. And one of the funny things they found in the whole process is they would call up our customers, people who we had already gotten permission from to talk to the marketing company. Mm-hmm. And they would call up and say, hey, I'm calling on behalf of Grassroots from the marketing company. And they'd say, who?
Who?
Yeah, and they'd say, no, Grassroots Lawn Care. I'd say, Peter and Chris.
Oh, yeah, Peter and Chris.
They knew us. They didn't know the company name.
Yeah.
So they said, look, people are thinking of you two guys. Let's roll into that. Just so happens your names kind of work well together here.
Yeah, they do. They flow.
So we thought, okay, that's exactly it. Now, obviously, now we're at a size where the customers aren't identifying directly with one of the two of us, but we really do our best to instill that same sense of pride and culture in the company.
Well, that's actually going to be my next question, because we were just talking to Luke on the previous podcast about naming his new business Not Pizza. Mm-hmm. Right, and I was thinking Stout Lawn Care. there's a lot of green turf, green, anything you want to say with grass. And I was like, stout lawn care, and I settled on it and I liked it and I rolled with it. And then I'm like, should have I done something even further from the truth or further from stout lawn care? Should have I done lemon zest? That was my thought. Should I do lemon zest lawn care? Should I do? But it's cool to see how you did it, and you're kind of breaking the mold of what I hear from people. I hear, don't put your name on things. You don't want to be known as that guy. They know Stout Lawn Care as Chris Stout from Stout Lawn Care. You don't want to. You want to grow your business and be behind all this stuff. And just hearing you gives me a little bit of sense of security that I am doing it the right way. Just because it's my name, like you said, if you have those core values and your team is you and how you would treat those customers or you would treat other people, then it's just the name. It's just the name. It's not me.
Yeah, the one that I like to think about is Ben and Jerry's, where there is the Ben, there is a Jerry. Those are the guys that started the whole thing. And you might think of those guys a little bit, but when you think of Ben and Jerry's, it's the brand, it's the whole image, it's what the company stands for, it's all that, and it's the really, really tasty ice cream.
Yeah.
But the fact that they named it after themselves didn't really detract from it. In fact, it probably helped out at the beginning that there was these two sort of, hippies that were starting up this cool ice cream company.
Yeah.
Give it a little cachet, but yeah. So
what year was that when you did the
rebranding?
Yeah.
That was 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
And since then, growing, doing great.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
So it's again, that was the reason why we weren't growing in 2004 is because the marketing was not right. And we got that piece to the puzzle fixed. And we thought, okay, that's it. We figured it out. Now we're good. And then we grew for a while longer, and then we couldn't grow anymore. And what we found at that point in time is that there was a new organizational challenge. When you get to a certain size, you need to manage the company differently. And we had about 11, 12 employees, and we were stuck, and we weren't getting much bigger. And the company was doing okay, but Peter was spending all of his day going out on potential new sales. I was stuck in the office all day, paying bills and doing a lot of other really mind-numbing busy work. Mm-hmm. And the crew was out there doing all the work themselves, and there was very little checkup on them. And so the quality of the work was really sketchy. And for a little bit there, yeah.
Well, let's pause there because we got to stop and do a quick break. But I really want to unpack that because I think that I am struggling with that present day, where Stout Lawn Care has been and where we have grown. The first 2 years were so fun. The third year I brought Steve in. That was a good year. The fourth year I felt like we had a full team. And now we're in this fifth year, and I feel like I have fucking nothing left. Like, I feel like the whole thing's a disaster at this point. Not because we're not growing or not paying bills. It just feels that way. So we'll unpack that in a second, and we'll be right back.
Hello, this is Brian and Stephanie, owners of Tick and Skeeter Deleter. Are you providing a tick and mosquito control service?
We formulated a product to target today's environmentally conscious market.
Tick and Skeeter Deleter is your ultimate 25B exempt pesticide.
This product controls on contact while acting as a repellent.
With these all-natural essential oils, you will leave behind an aroma even the neighbors will enjoy.
Elevate your business with Tick and Skeeter Deleter.
Use discount code ROOTZONE for a 5% discount on product at yardcomfort.com. Thank you for listening to the Root Zone podcast.
So, real quick, so we were just talking about how as you grew, your struggles when you grew. We went through year 1, 2, 3, and up to your rebranding, and then you kind of hit this. You're on the downturn again, where you weren't growing as much. And did you figure out that it was a production issue? Like the quality was going down, and the retention wasn't what you wanted. How as you and Peter looked at the business, how did you determine what the problem was, and then how did you remedy that situation?
I think I'm trying to remember back at our mindset at that point in time. So this would have been in around 2012 now. So it's about 8 years after the rebranding, and things, again, picked up. The company grew, but again, we were starting to stagnate a little bit. And, excuse me, sorry about that. I think what we just kind of realized, because he was going out and doing a lot of customer complaint calls, and we were seeing that certain people on the crew just weren't doing the work the right way, but they weren't getting the supervision, they weren't getting the training because we didn't have any time to devote to them. And we just kind of realized, if we're going to be able to grow any bigger, we need someone to manage this crew. And through a lot of discussions, we realized that there was nobody on the crew who could really step up. A couple of guys thought they could, but we knew they just wouldn't. Yep. They couldn't do it. They were just outsized personalities, and actually great technicians, did a good job on the lawns.
Yeah,
but they just were not.
I find that the best technicians are usually not the best managers.
Yeah, very often. So just like, in sports, think about world-class athletes who became world-class coaches. They're few and far between. It happens.
It happens,
but they're few and far. And oftentimes the best coaches in the world, you look and they were mid-level, low-level players.
Yeah.
So a little bit like that. We realized that had to be the case, and so we put out an ad and just tried to find a manager. And we got a bunch of people that came in that were interesting. And finally one person came in who was a golf course superintendent. He had recently parted ways with his previous employer. He had been putting in, 100-hour weeks as a superintendent. He had 2 young kids at home, and decided, I don't want that life anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want that stress. I don't want that. I want to see my kids grow up. So he started looking around. That's when we needed somebody. He came in. I didn't realize how big of a pay cut he took to come work for us. It actually was, a little bit jaw-dropping. It was a little bit scary.
Yeah.
I heard that. But we paid him as much as we could.
Yeah.
We did. And he was able to pay his bills at least well enough that he could get by. But we did make sure as the company grew after that he got a nice raise to the point where we could handle it each year. And he's making, thankfully, I remember the year when he surpassed what he had been making before, and I took that as a source of pride.
Oh,
He's still
absolutely.
with us, which was really nice.
And you should. You should be very proudful of a moment like that. That's I like to say that's half the reason I'm in business, is to help other people be successful.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What? How many employees do you have now?
We have 5 total.
5 total. Okay. So that's a tough in-between spot. And this is what I've figured out over the years. I'm going to give you a little breakdown, and hopefully maybe some of the viewers. And by the way, this is not totally original. I've read this before, and I've experienced this. So if you've read this somewhere else, if you're watching this or listening to this and you've read this somewhere else, I want to be very clear. I'm not claiming I made this up. Okay. But when you are just 1 or 2 people in a company, maybe 3, okay, it's you manage that company a very specific way, and you do it by you're doing all the work, or you're doing half the work or a third of the work, and then you're handling the other stuff, the billing, the bill paying, things like that. But you're very much out there getting your hands dirty and doing the work of the business. When you get up to around 10 employees, somewhere between 8 and 12, you can't be doing the work of the business anymore. You need to be managing the crew. Mm-hmm. You need 10 people. You can't expect them to just off on their own do everything the right way. They need supervision, they need guidance, they need training, they need direction, they need to be held accountable, they need to be rewarded for good quality work done. You've got a social dynamic going on with 10 people, and you can't not actively manage them. Somewhere between that 1 to 3 employees and 10 employees, you've got to make that shift. And it's really, really difficult to do that. But if you don't make that shift, you're never going to get there.
And that's exactly what I'm experiencing this year, is that I lost a guy last year, but I had a replacement, no big deal. And I thought to myself, I do all the larger properties. That's what I've done from the beginning. And I was doing every property. But I've been doing these larger properties. And last year I had trained somebody up, this gentleman, and he was doing some of those. So taking some of that work off of my shoulders, which is almost a full-time technician route. And after he left, I brought another guy on, and he had previously worked with me. And so now I'm trying to do all the work and train this guy to come and do the stuff that I'm doing. And Chris, maybe 7 minutes of training in 2024 so far, just because of my responsibilities as one of the owners, my responsibilities as a technician, my responsibilities as the lead customer service representative. Mm-hmm. My technician is guiding Steve in sales and marketing and how we're doing that. And it's just, this year has really, I had such high hopes. I mean, we talked before the winter, I had such high hopes for this year. And like I said, not that we're not doing good in revenue or sales or anything like that. I think our lawns look good, besides we need rain, but it's just like, I feel like I can't, I'm just treading water here.
You're in the uncomfortable in between.
It's terrible this year.
Yeah.
and I feel like I miss things. I feel like I'm not as responsive to my employees and my customers and my family. Like I feel like I'm getting pulled in a million different directions, and it's weird because I think Steve is there to help me. I know he's there to help me. He's always said it, but I don't know how to get him. I don't know how to let him help me. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
What to delegate, how to talk to him about delegating.
Well, let me ask you this. We just talked about this a minute ago. The best technicians don't necessarily make the best managers, right? Same for you and me, right? We might have been great getting the business started because we knew how to do the work and we maybe even knew how to talk to customers, but that doesn't mean we're great managers.
Yeah.
I'll be straight up. I was an awful manager at the beginning. I could not have a negative, uncomfortable conversation with anybody to save my life.
Yeah.
Forget about it. If you walked in 20 minutes late every day for a week, and we've talked about how being punctual and being on time is a critical component of being a part of this business, I would still just not say anything. But I'd let it slide. And then that caused so much angst and problem with the rest of the crew who were getting there on time and watching somebody walk all over me. It took a lot of years to kind of get up my courage to be able to face and have difficult conversations and do things fairly and train.
Yeah.
And that was a big impediment to growth too, is the fact that I was not a great manager.
Yeah.
Were
you a good trainer? Because I think I'm a good trainer. I don't know how to explain this.
I think I was a nice guy, and and I think people liked working for me because I wasn't going to yell and scream at them. But at the same time, I was not going to do the holding them accountable, which needed to be done.
Yeah.
And we had to figure out how to do that. My partner was much better at that than I was, so it's not like the company went without that. But I had to learn it as well.
Yeah, and you had to see. My thing is too is if I want to grow and I want to get out of this role where I'm doing bouncing around and doing everything, well, that's all well and it's easy to say, but you got to hire somebody. You got to have the money to pay that person. You got to make sure that you're gonna, if I'm, we have to be ready for the following season. You can't just hire a technician March 30th and expect them to be ready to service lawns. So I have to take that chance of paying somebody maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months ahead of when I actually need them. What can I use that money for? So these are, Chris, these are the thoughts that are keeping me up till 2 in the morning. I've got a great opportunity with an interview we did the other day, and we haven't heard back from him, and it's keeping me up because we gave him an offer that I think we can afford, but I don't want to lose him because we can't afford him, right? Where I'd rather not market or me take a personal salary hit or do something different to bring this person in because I think that it's going to take more off of me. But it's just another, like I said, this year has been talk about a learning experience and owning your own business. I thought the 1 through 4 was, like you said, it felt like it was so smooth. And then this year is just so many questions to answer. Trucks, insurance, how do we want to structure our business over the next 10 years? How can we make some tax concessions, or how can we be better? Now, do we hire a tax consultant? Do we hire a business, someone that, we got to get lawyers involved, which is a whole nother thing that you don't think, tens of thousands of dollars going to nothing. Really, in my mind, there's you obviously get everything out of it, but it's just when I'm growing, I'm like, whew, this is always fun. It's always keeping me on my toes.
I've got good news and bad news for you.
Okay.
And this is just based on my own experience, and again, also people who I've spoken to and seen. So I think it pans out largely, and that is when you do get up to around the 10 employee mark. Assuming you're able to discipline yourself to step back completely and focus on team management and becoming that leader and becoming that manager and empowering the crew, but also holding them accountable and becoming, just full-time management, life gets a lot easier because you're not pulled in so many different directions. You're focused on managing the people, replacing people as they leave, promoting people, paying them well, all the different decisions that have to be made. But really, you're a coach now. You're not a player coach, you're a coach. Now, that's the good news. Once you get there, life gets easier again. If you want to keep growing past that, now you have to figure out how to start managing managers.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different game. And so you get up to 40, 50 employees. One person can't manage 40 or 50 people. One person can manage 9 or 10, maybe 11. So you think about it, you get up to 50. Well, you need 5 people to manage those. Well, who manages those 5? Well, that's you again.
Yeah.
How do you manage someone who's managing someone else? And it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And
I can
so,
imagine, because then it's like kind of like whisper down the lane, you know, and an employee did this, and the manager handled it this way, and then it got to you. It's like, you got to go through you got to go up and down those steps a couple times to figure out what actually happened, and who you can praise, who you can blame, and how you can figure it out. That's some wise, very wise knowledge there out of you, Mr. Brown. I appreciate it. Let me look at my little tablet because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. This has been great so far, and like I said, I really appreciate you coming on. I guess the last question I really have for you is really what drives you. I know we talked about that Hummer and having some shiny, cool objects. I know it's very awesome that you flew down here in your plane to come visit us. This is all good things. I want to know what drives you. How did you find that drive? And is it money? Is it time? You know, we talk a lot on this podcast about time. Can't get time back. And you're at that stage, I think, where you're probably thinking, I want to spend more time with the family. I want to do that as much as I can. So what drives you, Mr. Brown?
Great question. Yeah, obviously money's nice. There's no question. Flew down, I got my pilot's license a couple years ago. That's what I refer to as my midlife crisis hobby. And it very much is. But it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
absolutely.
What really drives me is the challenge of it all. I just love it. We're at about 120 employees right now, and looking to get to that next phase. So I talked about getting up to like 40, 50 employees, and then you need to be able to manage the managers. The next phase up, and this is only that I've read, I haven't experienced it yet, okay? So I'm experiencing some of the growing pains of trying to get there.
All right, I love this. So we're all experiencing some sort of pain.
Oh, yeah. Just different. It comes in different shapes and sizes, but it's there. And the next phase up is somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 to 500 employees. And when you get up there, you need to have really what you think of as a traditional company, where you've got a CFO, you've got a marketing director, you've got an HR director, you've got policies, procedures, legal compliance. You've got all those things that you think about when you think of a large company. You're going to have all those pieces in place for it to work properly. And so we're putting all those pieces in place right now.
Wow.
And for me, that challenge is a lot of fun and very interesting, and saying, how can we build this structured company and still retain the spirit and the commitment to excellence and the camaraderie, and make it a place that people just want to come work and be a part of. And it's a constant challenge, and we're trying everything. We're having a lot of successes and a lot of things that don't work.
You're such a breath of fresh air, Chris, every time I talk to you, because too much in this green industry, all we hear about is grow, sell, grow, sell, grow, sell. That's all we hear. That's all I hear. How can you make the quickest dollar? And hearing from you and how you're looking at it, we talk a lot about culture. I call it the C word. I hate the word culture, because I don't think it's defined as a word. I think it's how your company is run is your culture, not one word.
It's how we do things around here.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be all the happy horse shit stuff and games and barbecues and all that. It really has nothing to do with it. I think it's all how you come into the office and how you treat your employees. But it's really cool to see how you have taken it from 1995 2 people to 2025. Your new goal is that many employees and that kind of growth, and it's not about for you. You could tomorrow, I'm 100% certain there's 15 private equity companies that would say, here, Teton Brown, here's a really fat check, and say, hey, see you later, have fun. But you are just doing it a little differently, and I really respect it. I love your brand, everything you do. We've talked about it numerous times, your social media. Everything you do is just spot on, and I'm really excited that I've gotten to know you, and I consider you a mentor now, and hopefully we can start doing a lot more of this with this Turf Nerds event, and hopefully it takes off. Hopefully it's fun. That's the idea.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that, and thanks for having me as a part of this. I mean, hey, you just give me a chance to sit down and talk about me for like an hour here. This is how much better does life get, right?
Yeah, and this is one of those things, like, I try to, you say you got to keep busy. I have a full-time job running Stout Lawn and Pest, but just something about these conversations and something that burns inside of me that wants to do these more often, and it makes my life a little bit more chaotic and a little bit more stressful, but I think it turns out well in the end.
Yeah, well, it's a great way to learn. And I think, one of the things and I know we're wrapping up here, but spoke with a gentleman who's incredibly successful in the landscape business industry. I'm not going to name names, but he's somebody who sold his company for hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. Huge. And also stays on the board and continues to run the company. And I talked to him one time, and he did exactly what you're doing, which is that he took every opportunity to get to know other businesses and share notes. And he would go meet somebody who had a little 5-person operation while he's running a 400-person operation. And he would come back to his office with a notebook full of ideas that he got from that guy.
Yeah.
And so I think, we're here to learn from each other and from everybody else that's in the room right over to the side of us there. And it's just, the more we talk, the more we're all just going to get great ideas and just keep raising the level of quality in the overall industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Chris. I had a great time. Thanks, everyone that actually watched this. I guess this is actually going to be on YouTube in the next few weeks. We got a couple that have been recorded, so I'll be posting these. Please like, subscribe. I will leave all of Mr. Brown's contact info and his websites and everything else. I'm sure he's an open book. Ever since I've met him, he's been a very kind soul and very open on any conversations or any questions I have for him. So thanks again, Chris, and we'll see you on the next episode.